Question 1. A Scrum team has just finished their sprint planning. During the sprint, the developers realize that they have taken on too much work to complete the sprint goal. What is the most appropriate action for them to take? A. The developers should work overtime to ensure all selected product backlog items are completed by the end of the sprint. B. The developers should immediately inform the product owner and negotiate scope adjustments within the sprint backlog to meet the sprint goal. C. The Scrum Master should reevaluate the sprint backlog and remove lower priority items. D. The product owner should add more developers to the Scrum team to increase capacity for the current sprint. Answer: B. The developers should immediately inform the product owner and negotiate scope adjustments within the sprint backlog to meet the sprint goal. The sprint goal is the overarching objective for the sprint, and the developers are empowered and self-managing to achieve it. When the developers realize they cannot meet the sprint goal with the current sprint backlog, their most appropriate action is to collaborate with the product owner to renegotiate the scope of the sprint backlog, without compromising the sprint goal. This demonstrates transparency and adaptation, core Scrum values, ensuring the team commits to what is realistically achievable within the sprint's timebox. Remember, the sprint goal should remain the guiding star, and scope adjustments are a collaborative effort to ensure its achievement. Question 2. Which of the following best describes the accountability of the product owner regarding the product backlog? A. The product owner is accountable for managing the product backlog, including its content, ordering, and transparency, but delegates the creation of product backlog items to the developers. B. The product owner is solely accountable for clearly expressing product backlog items, ordering them to best achieve goals and missions, and ensuring the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood by all. C. The product owner collaborates with stakeholders to identify features and then directs the developers to refine and size those items in the product backlog. D. The product owner maintains the product backlog and ensures it contains enough items for 2 to 3 sprints ahead, allowing the developers to pull items without further consultation. Answer: B. The product owner is solely accountable for clearly expressing product backlog items, ordering them to best achieve goals and missions, and ensuring the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood by all. The product owner has the sole accountability for managing the product backlog, which includes its content, ordering, and transparency to maximize the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team. While others may contribute to defining product backlog items, the product owner is ultimately accountable for these elements, making decisions on behalf of stakeholders. This ensures a single point of accountability for product value and direction. Think of the product owner as the single voice of the customer and business for the Scrum team, responsible for guiding what gets built. Question 3. What is the primary purpose of the Daily Scrum? A. To report progress to the Scrum Master and product owner and identify any new impediments that have arisen. B. To allow the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary. C. To commit to specific tasks for the next 24 hours and ensure everyone has work assigned. D. To review the overall project schedule and adjust forecasts based on recent team performance. Answer: B. To allow the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary. The Daily Scrum is a 15-minute event for the developers to synchronize activities and create a plan for the next 24 hours, focusing on how they will work together to achieve the sprint goal. It is not a status meeting for stakeholders or the Scrum Master, but rather an inspection and adaptation event for the developers themselves. By inspecting their progress and adapting their plan daily, the developers maintain flexibility and increase their chances of meeting the sprint goal effectively. Remember, the Daily Scrum is for the developers, by the developers, to facilitate their self-management. Question 4. A Scrum team finds that their definition of done, DOD, is consistently not being met by the end of the sprint. What is the first and most crucial step the Scrum team should take? A. The Scrum Master should enforce stricter adherence to the DoD by blocking any work that doesn't meet it. B. The Scrum team should discuss this issue during the sprint retrospective and agree on an actionable plan to improve adherence or adjust the DoD. C. The product owner should reduce the scope of the product backlog items to make them easier to complete. D. The developers should work overtime until all items meet the definition of done. Answer: B. The Scrum team should discuss this issue during the sprint retrospective and agree on an actionable plan to improve adherence or adjust the DoD. The definition of done is a formal description of the state of the increment when it meets the quality measures required for the product. If the Scrum team is consistently failing to meet it, this indicates an organizational or process impediment that needs to be addressed. The sprint retrospective is the dedicated event for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements to be enacted during the next sprint. This fosters continuous improvement and ensures the team collectively owns the quality and process. Don't just work harder, work smarter by understanding and addressing the root causes of impediments in the retrospective. Question 5. Which of the following is true about the sprint goal? A. The sprint goal is created by the product owner and presented to the developers at sprint planning. B. The sprint goal is an immutable objective for the sprint that developers can use to make trade-offs and guide their work. C. The sprint goal is a summary of the product backlog items selected for the sprint, ensuring all items are completed. D. The sprint goal is an optional element, mainly used for larger or more complex sprints to provide a focus. Answer: B. The sprint goal is an immutable objective for the sprint that developers can use to make trade-offs and guide their work. The sprint goal is the single objective for the sprint, crafted collaboratively by the product owner and developers during sprint planning. Once agreed upon, it becomes fixed and guides the developers, allowing them flexibility in adjusting the scope of the sprint backlog if necessary, without compromising the overarching goal. This provides focus and coherence, enabling the developers to be self-managing and make informed decisions throughout the sprint to achieve that objective. Think of the sprint goal as the team's North Star for the sprint, providing clarity and purpose. Question 6. A new Scrum team is struggling to understand their roles. The developers are frequently asking the Scrum Master for direct instructions on what tasks to pick up next. What should the Scrum Master do in this situation? A. The Scrum Master should create a detailed task list for the developers and assign them work to ensure progress. B. The Scrum Master should remind the developers of their accountability for self-managing and selecting their own work from the sprint backlog to achieve the sprint goal. C. The Scrum Master should direct the product owner to provide clearer product backlog items so developers know what to do. D. The Scrum Master should step in and facilitate daily meetings where developers report on tasks completed and assigned. Answer: B. The Scrum Master should remind the developers of their accountability for self-managing and selecting their own work from the sprint backlog to achieve the sprint goal. The Scrum Master serves the Scrum team by coaching them in self-management and cross-functionality. Developers are accountable for creating a plan for the sprint backlog, and for self-managing their work to achieve the sprint goal. Instead of providing solutions, the Scrum Master should coach them on how to take ownership of their work and collaborate to pull items from the sprint backlog. This helps the team mature into a self-organizing unit, which is crucial for agility and effectiveness. Empowering the team to solve their own problems fosters true agility, rather than creating dependency. Question 7. What is the primary purpose of the sprint review? A. To formally accept completed product backlog items and sign off on the increment. B. To inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog if needed, in collaboration with stakeholders. C. To review the team's performance over the sprint and identify process improvements. D. To present a demo of the increment to management for approval to release. Answer: B. To inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog if needed, in collaboration with stakeholders. The sprint review is a working session where the Scrum team and key stakeholders collaborate on what was done in the sprint and what has changed in their environment. Based on this, attendees collaborate on what to do next. This is a crucial event for inspecting the increment and the product backlog, allowing for adaptations to the product backlog and future planning based on real-time feedback and market conditions. It emphasizes transparency and adaptation, allowing the product to evolve optimally. Remember, it's a collaborative session, not a one-way presentation, and the product backlog is likely to be adjusted as a result. Question 8. A product owner is struggling to prioritize the product backlog because multiple stakeholders have conflicting demands. What is the product owner's ultimate accountability in this situation? A. The product owner should defer to the highest-ranking stakeholders' demands to avoid conflict. B. The product owner should facilitate a meeting with all stakeholders to reach a consensus on prioritization. C. The product owner is solely accountable for maximizing the value of the product, which includes making difficult prioritization decisions even when conflicting demands exist. D. The product owner should ask the Scrum Master to mediate the conflict among stakeholders and help them decide. Answer: C. The product owner is solely accountable for maximizing the value of the product, which includes making difficult prioritization decisions even when conflicting demands exist. The product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team. This accountability extends to making tough decisions about what goes into the product backlog and in what order, even when faced with conflicting stakeholder input. While collaboration and understanding stakeholder needs are vital, the final decision and accountability for prioritization rest with the product owner. This ensures a clear vision and consistent direction for the product. Your role as a product owner is to be the single voice of value, even when it means saying no or not yet to some requests. Question 9. Who is primarily responsible for managing impediments that obstruct the Scrum team's progress? A. The Scrum Master, who is accountable for ensuring the Scrum team's effectiveness. B. The developers, as part of their self-management responsibilities. C. The product owner, as impediments can affect the value delivered. D. The Scrum team as a whole, sharing the responsibility equally. Answer: A. The Scrum Master, who is accountable for ensuring the Scrum team's effectiveness. The Scrum Master serves the Scrum team by causing the removal of impediments to the Scrum team's progress. While developers identify impediments during the daily Scrum, and everyone on the Scrum team can help resolve them, the Scrum Master holds the primary accountability for ensuring these impediments are addressed and removed. This frees the developers to focus on creating the increment, allowing the Scrum Master to act as a servant leader and process facilitator. Think of the Scrum Master as the guardian of the Scrum process, clearing the path for the team to succeed. Question 10. During a sprint, the developers discover a critical technical dependency on an external team that was not identified during sprint planning. This dependency threatens the sprint goal. What should be the developer's immediate action? A. Wait until the daily Scrum to discuss the issue with the Scrum Master and product owner. B. Immediately escalate the issue to the external team's manager for resolution. C. Collaborate with the product owner and Scrum Master as soon as possible to discuss options and potential impacts on the sprint goal. D. Replan their tasks to work around the dependency, even if it means not meeting the sprint goal exactly as planned. Answer: C. Collaborate with the product owner and Scrum Master as soon as possible to discuss options and potential impacts on the sprint goal. When a significant issue arises during the sprint that jeopardizes the sprint goal, the developers should not wait for a formal event like the daily Scrum if immediate action is needed. They should proactively communicate with the product owner and Scrum Master, as they are key partners in addressing such challenges. This immediate transparency allows the Scrum team to collectively inspect the situation and adapt their plan, potentially renegotiating the sprint backlog or even considering a sprint cancellation if the goal becomes obsolete. Timely communication is crucial for effective problem-solving in Scrum. Question 11. Which statement best describes the accountability of the developers? A. Developers are accountable for self-managing to create a usable increment, contributing to the definition of done, and adhering to the sprint goal. B. Developers are accountable for completing all tasks assigned to them by the Scrum Master and delivering the increment. C. Developers are accountable for designing, building, and testing features, as directed by the product owner. D. Developers are accountable for refining the product backlog, estimating work, and ensuring technical quality. Answer: A. Developers are accountable for self-managing to create a usable increment, contributing to the definition of done, and adhering to the sprint goal. Developers are the people in the Scrum team who are committed to creating any aspect of a usable increment each sprint. They are self-managing, meaning they decide how to turn product backlog items into a done increment. Their accountabilities include creating the sprint backlog, instilling quality by adhering to a definition of done, and adapting their plan daily toward the sprint goal. This empowerment fosters ownership and creativity within the team. Remember, developers are a cross-functional unit responsible for delivering a potentially releasable product. Question 12. What does it mean for a product backlog item to be ready or refined? A. It means the product backlog item has been fully developed and tested by the developers. B. It means the product backlog item is understood enough by the developers that they can confidently take it into a sprint without further clarification. C. It means the product backlog item has been approved by all stakeholders and is now ready for implementation. D. It means the product backlog item has been assigned a fixed estimate by the developers and is prioritized at the top of the product backlog. Answer: B. It means the product backlog item is understood enough by the developers that they can confidently take it into a sprint without further clarification. Product backlog refinement is the act of breaking down and further defining product backlog items into smaller, more precise items. An item is considered ready when it's transparent and understood by the developers to the extent that they can select it during sprint planning and confidently begin working on it without needing extensive additional clarification within the sprint. This collaborative activity between the product owner and developers helps ensure a smooth sprint planning and reduces ambiguity during the sprint. Think of refinement as continually grooming the backlog so that it's always ready for consumption by the developers. Question 13. A product owner is constantly adding new, high-priority items to the product backlog throughout the sprint, causing the developers to shift focus frequently. What Scrum value is being undermined the most in this scenario? A. Openness. B. Respect. C. Commitment. D. Focus. Answer: D. Focus. When new, high-priority items are constantly introduced mid-sprint, it directly undermines the Scrum value of focus. The Scrum team commits to a sprint goal during sprint planning, and the developers focus exclusively on achieving that goal during the sprint. Frequent changes to the sprint backlog or the introduction of new priorities divert the developers' attention, making it difficult to concentrate on the agreed-upon work and achieve the sprint goal. This lack of focus reduces efficiency and can lead to incomplete work. Maintaining focus during a sprint allows the team to deliver a done increment and maximize value. Question 14. How does the Scrum Master best support the product owner? A. By managing the product backlog and ensuring it is prioritized correctly. B. By ensuring that the product owner knows how to arrange the product backlog to maximize value and by helping the Scrum team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog items. C. By resolving conflicts between the product owner and stakeholders regarding product requirements. D. By coaching the product owner on how to write effective user stories and acceptance criteria. Answer: B. By ensuring that the product owner knows how to arrange the product backlog to maximize value and by helping the Scrum team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog items. The Scrum Master serves the product owner in several ways, primarily by helping them understand and practice empiricism and the need for clear and concise product backlog items. This coaching helps the product owner effectively manage the product backlog to maximize value. The Scrum Master doesn't take over product owner responsibilities but rather guides them in fulfilling their accountabilities, ensuring the product backlog is transparent and well understood by the entire Scrum team. The Scrum Master acts as a guide and coach, empowering the product owner to excel in their role. Question 15. The sprint retrospective must produce at least one high-priority process improvement that the Scrum team commits to implementing in the upcoming sprint. Is this statement true or false? A. True, the retrospective's goal is always actionable improvements. B. False, the retrospective focuses on identifying improvements, but committing to implement them in the next sprint is optional. C. True, but only if the Scrum Master determines the improvements are feasible. D. False, the output of the retrospective is typically a set of observations, not necessarily a concrete plan for the next sprint. Answer: A. True, the retrospective's goal is always actionable improvements. The sprint retrospective is an opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements to be enacted during the next sprint. The most impactful improvements identified are addressed as product backlog items or in other ways directly by the Scrum team, and the Scrum team commits to implementing at least one high-priority improvement. This ensures continuous improvement, which is a cornerstone of empiricism in Scrum. A retrospective without actionable commitments misses its core purpose of adaptation. Question 16. What is the main purpose of timeboxing all Scrum events? A. To ensure that work is completed within strict deadlines and maintain control over the project schedule. B. To limit the risk of an event taking too much time, encouraging brevity and focus, and fostering a regular rhythm. C. To provide precise estimates for project stakeholders and track team velocity. D. To enforce discipline and accountability among Scrum team members for attending meetings. Answer: B. To limit the risk of an event taking too much time, encouraging brevity and focus, and fostering a regular rhythm. All events in Scrum are timeboxed, meaning they have a maximum duration. This timeboxing encourages the Scrum team to be concise, focused, and productive within each event, preventing endless discussions and ensuring sufficient time remains for the actual work of developing the increment. It also establishes a consistent rhythm for the Scrum team, making planning and forecasting more predictable. Think of timeboxes as guards that protect the team's time and ensure critical discussions happen efficiently. Question 17. The Scrum Master is experiencing resistance from functional managers who insist on assigning individual tasks to developers and pulling them from the Scrum team for other work. How should the Scrum Master address this? A. The Scrum Master should inform the functional managers that their actions are against Scrum principles and request their cooperation. B. The Scrum Master should coach the functional managers on how Scrum promotes self-managing, cross-functional teams, and the negative impact of external interference on team effectiveness. C. The Scrum Master should direct the product owner to prioritize work from functional managers to reduce conflict. D. The Scrum Master should escalate the issue to senior management to enforce compliance with Scrum. Answer: B. The Scrum Master should coach the functional managers on how Scrum promotes self-managing, cross-functional teams, and the negative impact of external interference on team effectiveness. The Scrum Master serves the organization by leading, training, and coaching in its Scrum adoption, which includes helping stakeholders and managers understand Scrum. In this scenario, the Scrum Master should coach the functional managers about the value of self-managing teams and the detrimental effects of micromanagement and task assignment from outside the Scrum team. This educational approach helps the organization understand and embrace Scrum's principles, fostering an environment where Scrum teams can thrive. Coaching is often more effective than simply stating rules. It helps others understand the why. Question 18. What is the ultimate goal of product backlog refinement? A. To ensure the product backlog contains enough items for at least 2 sprints. B. To break down large product backlog items into smaller, manageable tasks. C. To add detail, estimates, and order to product backlog items, improving transparency and understanding. D. To select product backlog items for the upcoming sprint planning. Answer: C. To add detail, estimates, and order to product backlog items, improving transparency and understanding. Product backlog refinement is the continuous process of adding detail, estimates, and order to product backlog items. While it often involves breaking down large items and ensuring enough work is available for future sprints, its ultimate goal is to improve the transparency and understanding of the product backlog for the entire Scrum team. This collaborative activity ensures that when developers select items during sprint planning, they are clear, concise, and well understood, facilitating efficient work. Regular refinement ensures the product backlog is a living, evolving artifact, always reflecting the current best understanding of what needs to be built. Question 19. During sprint planning, the product owner proposes a sprint goal, and the developers commit to the product backlog items they believe they can complete to achieve that goal. What happens if, after some discussion, the developers don't feel they can commit to the proposed scope for the sprint? A. The developers must commit to the scope proposed by the product owner to ensure the sprint goal is met. B. The product owner should remove the sprint goal and allow the developers to select any items they feel comfortable with. C. The Scrum team should collaborate to negotiate the scope of the sprint backlog items, or even the sprint goal itself, until a mutual commitment can be reached. D. The Scrum Master should mediate and enforce a compromise between the product owner and developers. Answer: C. The Scrum team should collaborate to negotiate the scope of the sprint backlog items, or even the sprint goal itself, until a mutual commitment can be reached. Sprint planning is a collaborative event where the entire Scrum team defines the sprint goal and selects product backlog items for the sprint. If the developers cannot commit to the proposed scope, it's an opportunity for discussion and negotiation. The Scrum team, including the product owner and developers, must collaborate to adjust the sprint goal or the selected product backlog items until a realistic and mutually agreeable commitment is found. This emphasizes the Scrum team's self-management and shared ownership, rather than one role dictating terms to another. Always aim for a collaborative solution that respects the team's capacity and expertise. Question 20. Which of the following is not a characteristic of a well-defined product backlog item? A. It is clear and concise, understood by all members of the Scrum team. B. It includes a detailed technical solution designed by an architect. C. It has an estimated size to help with forecasting. D. It is ordered to maximize value or reduce risk. Answer: B. It includes a detailed technical solution designed by an architect. While technical considerations are crucial, a product backlog item typically describes what needs to be built, not how it should be built in detail. The how is the responsibility of the developers during the sprint, leveraging their self-management and cross-functional skills. Including a predefined, detailed technical solution would remove the developers' autonomy and limit their ability to innovate or adapt during the sprint. Product backlog items focus on value and problem statements, leaving the solution space open for the development team. Question 21. What is the primary reason for a Scrum Master to facilitate the daily Scrum rather than the developers running it themselves? A. To ensure the daily Scrum is focused on impediments and not status updates. B. The Scrum Master typically does not facilitate the daily Scrum, the developers are accountable for conducting it. C. To record actions and decisions and ensure accountability. D. To report progress to management on behalf of the developers. Answer: B. The Scrum Master typically does not facilitate the daily Scrum, the developers are accountable for conducting it. The daily Scrum is a 15-minute event for the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog. The developers are solely accountable for conducting the daily Scrum, deciding its structure and format. The Scrum Master ensures the developers understand its purpose and keeps it within the time box, but they do not typically facilitate it unless the developers explicitly request it or are new to Scrum and need initial guidance. This emphasizes the developers' self-management and ownership of their plan. The Scrum Master observes and coaches, but the meeting belongs to the developers. Question 22. What happens to product backlog items that are not done by the end of the sprint? A. They are removed from the product backlog as they were not completed. B. They are automatically carried over to the next sprint and prioritized at the top. C. They are returned to the product backlog for future consideration and re-evaluation. D. They are refined further by the product owner and represented at the next sprint planning. Answer: C. They are returned to the product backlog for future consideration and re-evaluation. Only product backlog items that meet the definition of done are considered part of the increment and can be potentially released. Any item that is not done by the end of the sprint is not part of the increment and cannot be shipped or demonstrated as complete. Such items are returned to the product backlog, where they are re-evaluated, reprioritized, and may be selected for a future sprint based on the product owner's discretion and current product goals. Scrum emphasizes completing work to a done state each sprint, promoting transparency about true progress. Question 23. A Scrum team consistently fails to deliver a done increment every sprint, often carrying over significant work. Which of the following is the most likely root cause? A. The product owner is not skilled enough at writing clear product backlog items. B. The Scrum Master is not adequately removing impediments for the team. C. The definition of done is either too weak or not being adhered to, or the developers are consistently overcommitting. D. Stakeholders are not providing enough feedback during the sprint review. Answer: C. The definition of done is either too weak or not being adhered to, or the developers are consistently overcommitting. Consistently failing to deliver a done increment suggests issues with the team's ability to forecast, its understanding of done, or its commitment to quality. The definition of done ensures transparency and quality, so if it's too weak, e.g., coding complete, but not tested, or if the team isn't adhering to it, work isn't truly done. Overcommitting during sprint planning is also a common cause, where developers select more work than they can realistically complete to a done state within the sprint. The Scrum team needs to inspect and adapt its capacity planning and adherence to the DoD, typically in the retrospective. Question 24. Who is accountable for ensuring the Scrum team adheres to the timeboxes of all Scrum events? A. The Scrum Master. B. The product owner. C. The developers. D. The entire Scrum team. Answer: A. The Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. This includes ensuring that all Scrum events take place and are positive, productive, and kept within their timeboxes. While the entire Scrum team benefits from and participates in respecting timeboxes, the Scrum Master holds the primary accountability for enforcing these rules to ensure the effectiveness and rhythm of Scrum. Think of the Scrum Master as the guardian of the Scrum framework, guiding the team to operate effectively within its boundaries. Question 25. Which of the following best describes the accountability of the Scrum Master regarding the sprint backlog? A. The Scrum Master is accountable for helping the developers understand how to create and maintain the sprint backlog. B. The Scrum Master ensures that the sprint backlog contains enough detail for all tasks. C. The Scrum Master removes items from the sprint backlog if they are not progressing. D. The Scrum Master facilitates the creation of tasks for each product backlog item in the sprint backlog. Answer: A. The Scrum Master is accountable for helping the developers understand how to create and maintain the sprint backlog. The Scrum Master serves the Scrum team by coaching the developers in self-management and creating high-value increments. This includes helping them understand how to create and maintain the sprint backlog, which is the developer's plan for achieving the sprint goal. The Scrum Master does not directly manage the sprint backlog or dictate its content. Instead, they coach the developers on how to own and manage their own work and plan effectively. The sprint backlog is the developer's detailed plan, and the Scrum Master guides them in its effective use.